ICSR stands for the International Center for the Study of Radicalization and Political Violence. It was launched in early 2008, and even though it's based at King's College London, it's actually a partnership of 4 institutions: King's, the University of Pennsylvania, the Interdisciplinary Center Herzliya in Israel, and the Regional Center on Conflict Prevention in Jordan. The idea of ICSR is to bring together knowledge and leadership, to draw on experts, policymakers, civil society, even business, in finding better solutions, more intelligent solutions for countering radicalization and political violence through first-class research, through outcome-driven dialogue, but also by nurturing leadership through education and training.
The internet, cyberspace in general, is viewed as new media, and a certain amount of fear and distrust comes along with that. And it's always been the case. It was the same with the printing press, the telegraph, the radio. You know, the Pope wanted to ban the printing press, but in the end of the day, he got a lot of his books printed. The perception is that the internet as a medium, as a place where people socialize, as a place where people congregate and discuss and debate issues, is becoming a major driver of the radicalization of individuals into violence, such as terrorism. So that's the principal issue here. This is the thesis that is concerning governments and policymakers globally. Because these are technical environments, governments have become extremely exercised and very concerned and very enthusiastic, actually, about the potential for technical solutions to what they see as technical problems. So in the first instance, we had a look at a lot of these solutions to see if they would address what we saw as the issue of online radicalization, how it was actually occurring.
It's very simple. Everyone in the UK, pretty much everyone in the UK, uses the internet. And if government implements the wrong solutions, you may not be able to access the content that you may wish to access on the internet. Some of these technical solutions are problematic precisely because they are over-blocking a lot of legitimate sites. So in order to block one radical extremist site, some of these filtering mechanisms are blocking out thousands of legitimate sites that you as a citizen will not be able to access because the government decided to install that filter. So it affects you as a citizen. Of course, if positive, useful, effective solutions are being implemented, that will have an impact on radicalization, that will potentially have an impact on political violence in this country and provide you with a happier and more peaceful society to live in. The report contains 4 key recommendations. One is about strategic prosecutions rather than going after content, going after the people that have produced that content and prosecuting them under existing laws. Second, empowering online communities to self-regulate, which will make state intervention and government laws unnecessary. Thirdly, strengthening media literacy so that people do not only possess functional literacy, being able to switch on the computer, but also are able to have critical literacy. They are able to assess and evaluate the content that they see on the internet. And fourthly, setting up a grassroots startup fund, allowing more people to go on the internet and challenge the extremist narrative.
All of us are beholden really to be aware of the environments in which we're operating. And if we're operating in social environments online, one of our recommendations, the one about critical media literacy, is, I think, as Peter said, possibly in the long term the most important one, is to be aware of your environment, to contribute to your environment, which of course you can do through so-called Web 2.0 and user-generated content, etc. And that will only increase. 10 hours of video added to YouTube every minute or something like that. And in terms of what the average person can do is just to be aware. Most online communities are self-regulated to a degree, which is why real-world communities are also self-regulated to a degree. That's how normative behavior patterns emerge. What is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And if you can give people a push in the right direction, perhaps, and the right direction is the pro-social direction rather than the anti-social direction, if you like. And there is a role for government in stimulating debate around that, but not necessarily getting involved at the level. And when you're asking about how does this all impact on you, it impacts greatly, because I think if you go for technical censorship measures, which is essentially what lots of governments are talking about, that will affect you, as Peter says. And nobody wants that, whether it's applied to newspapers, TVs, radios, or whatever. In the broader scheme of things, cyberspace will be regulated, and we are trying to play a part in the debate and contribute to the debate on how that should happen, because without this type of study, things could go in some very strange and unwelcome directions.
The project is very interesting because it really illustrates what ICSR is all about. This is something that has often been mentioned by policymakers as a problem. It is quite obviously perceived as an urgent problem by many policymakers in many liberal democracies across the world, something that needs to be addressed. But really, policymakers haven't brought rigorous, first-class research to be applied to this topic. This is what we see as our role.
There's no single-shot cure. There's no magic bullet here to the problem of radicalisation. And we have to be very specific what we're talking about here. We're talking about radicalisation into violence associated with terrorism. We're not talking about people becoming radicalised per se. There will always be a place for radicals in Western liberal democracies, and that's largely where most of them started. And we're not talking about that kind of thing. We're talking about chipping away at the edges of what is a social problem and which becomes a problem from all of us once it turns into violence.